chain. And I look at silver as a strategic metal. I'm not sure if they're going to own more and more of the supply chain. So yeah, for them to move down and start buying up the miners, well, inflation is there, and it's going to get worse. Whether it's grains, whether it's oil, whether it's metals, a variety of different commodities. Russia's a big supplier of multiple commodities to the world. I think Russia supplies 30% of energy to the planet, predominantly Europe, and to cut Europe off is going to be devastating for those economies. So, it's going to cause more supply chain disruptions and higher prices all across the board. About interest rates and the Fed, I think consensus has been that there's going to be a 0.5 point increase in March, and that was right up until I think the invasion. I've seen the numbers now come out at a 0.25 point, and even now I'm listening to people say there's going to be zero action, from the Fed. It's hard to say, but I would not be surprised for the Fed to, blame this war for making no action at all, and that's going to be very, very positive for gold. I wouldn't be surprised to see gold gap up $100 at the end of March when this all happens. It is, you're right, used in a variety of military weapons and tools, from navigation systems to the weapons, and it's just one more, use of the metal. We're seeing solar panels, we're seeing electric cars, now we're seeing military weaponry and elsewhere around the planet. But, if it stays regional, I think, still the demand is there for solar panels. I've seen numbers as high as 140 million ounces of demand in the solar industry. We're likely going to approach 100 million ounces of demand in the automotive sector this year. These industries are moving fast to electrify the planet and get fuel combustion cars off the surface of the earth. So I don't think that's going to stop unless this war really escalates out of control. I think that thesis is coming out more, among the experts, that the new Green Deal and, going green is not going to be as easy or quick as some politicians would like it to be. Getting off oil and gas, it's a great goal, but it's not going to take 10 years or less. This is a 50-year process to change the electrical grid on the planet. And that's going to take a lot of silver and a lot of copper and a lot of other metals to accomplish that. And I think the politicians are being unrealistic. And I think this war, it's very energy intensive. And I think, countries around the world, I wouldn't be surprised to see Germany, for example, turn on their nuclear plants again. We're already seeing talks in Japan about them turning on the nuclear plants. So politicians are waking up to the fact that some of their objectives or goals are unrealistic. The amount of ounces we need is so great. Like, we're producing 800 million ounces a year as a mining sector. And you said yourself that we're consuming this year 1.1 billion ounces. That's a 300 million ounce deficit. Where's that silver going to come from? How long can you have these deficits before there's just simply no silver left? I think there's not enough silver around anyways to supply the auto industry and supply the solar panel industry or the electronic manufacturing industry. So we know the deficits exist, whether there's a war or not. I don't think that changes anything. There's a limited amount of silver sitting on the surface in investment hoards. Once that's gone, there's no place to get your silver. So one thing has to happen. Silver prices have to go up. So how long is it going to take for the mining sector to react? It's a decade, 10 to 15 years to get a mine into production from the day that the management teams decide to bring a mine into production. I am a trader. I came from the banking sector. I know trading. I see the way markets work. And, when you see silver and gold prices fluctuate the way they did last Thursday, that was option expiry date. So obviously there must have been a lot of people on the wrong side of that trade who drove down the gold prices and the silver prices that day. I think gold had a $100 trading range that day and silver had a $2 trading range that day. That's not natural markets. Markets don't act like that unless there's someone involved in moving those prices. And unfortunately, as long as that is allowed to continue to happen, I've been voicing this concern for a number of years now. The regulators don't come to the and look at what's really going on in these paper markets, because unfortunately, as a mining sector, we have to rely on the paper market for pricing our commodity.
Right.
If somehow we can get away from the paper market and price our market based on actual supply and demand, where we can actually deal with the end user directly, whether it's a Sony or Panasonic or a Tesla or BMW, you name the consumer. I think that's where we need to go, and that's where we get proper pricing. We produce, 13 million ounces of silver a year. So we're big in the sector, but you've got a lot of the base metal manufacturers, the copper manufacturers, the zinc manufacturers who produce multiples of that. But the silver is a small component of their overall financial system or statements, because they're predominantly copper producers or whatever the case may be. So they actually really don't care too much about silver because it's just a small line item. That's a small part of their business. I think there's just been so much money flowing into the major markets that the entire mining sector has been ignored. It is a small market. You compare the mining sector to, the high technology sector, for example. I don't know how many First Majestics can fit inside Apple, but it would be a lot. Apple.
But you need First Majestics to make the silver that goes into the Apple phones.
That is true, and that's why we get so ignored for whatever reason. And I've said we've seen Elon Musk invest in nickel or also lithium. I wouldn't be surprised to see the technology sector start buying up mines because why not own the entire supply chain? If you are producing iPads, you're at the mercy of the miners, and you need the supply. But in a constrained environment where the metal's not there, you need to own a mine to close the supply chain. And I look at silver as a strategic metal. I'm not sure if a mining or a high-tech company like an Apple, for example, needs to own a gold mine because they use such a small amount of gold. But silver is a different thing. Copper, nickel, these are strategic metals that they need to invest or develop and then expand their businesses. So yes, I could absolutely see it there. You've seen the movie iRobot?
I have not.
You have not? Okay. Or Terminator? Terminator. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, in these types of, sci-fi movies, there's always one or two conglomerates that basically run the planet. And we're not that far away from that. Look at this. How many trillion-dollar companies do we have today? 10 years ago we had 0. I think today we have about 5, at least last I looked. So these companies are getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and they're wiping out the competition. And that trend is going to continue. So what does that mean, 10, 20, 30 years from now? These big conglomerates are going to own more and more of the supply chain. So yeah, for them to move down and start buying up the miners, for me, as the CEO of First Majestic, I want to own the entire supply chain. I want to own the refinery. I want to own the smelter. I want to own the mint, because that way my margins increase. So why wouldn't a high technology, an Apple of the world, want to, not do the same thing? We're mining 7 to 1. So what I mean by that is for every 1 ounce of gold we mine worldwide, we mine 7 ounces of silver. So, but we're trading at something in the order of 75 to 1. So we traded at 7 to 1 today at approximately $2,000 gold. It's at $150 silver approximately. That's where we should be today. So we're not, obviously, but I'm not going to predict $150 today. I am a triple-digit silver guy, but I've dealt with it'll happen in 2022. But hopefully it happens in my lifetime.